Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode of Stage Debate with Cost Seg Isaac. I am your host, Isaac Weinberger, a cost segregation specialist. I help people and I teach people just like you how to utilize and leverage the depreciation benefits, how to use that to win investors. So definitely reach out to me on LinkedIn. I'm happy to discuss with you. Today we have three dynamic folks in the investment sales space, in the multifamily investment sales space. Aaron Kuroiwa, Christian Zaciewski, and David Ferber, guys who have made a tremendous imprint in the space, and we'll hear about their journey and their take on today's market. I want to thank our episode sponsor, Liveline Security, nationwide security experts. They will put cameras everywhere, monitor it 24/7. The second somebody steps foot on that property that doesn't belong there, they will get a message. They will come down and secure everything up. So definitely folks you should reach out to, all asset classes. Thank you so much to our corporate sponsor, Michael Stern of LionStar Tax and LSD Consultants, tax geniuses, outsourced CFO services. Clients that I've sent them in the past are super happy. They also have a collections team and leasing team. So if you're having a problem getting your property fully leased up, or you're having a problem with collections, these guys are the masters. So reach out to them today. Michael Stern is a friend, a guy who's made a tremendous imprint in the space as well. Tune in, guys. I'm excited. Here we go. Welcome back to another episode of Stage Debate with Cost Seg Isaac. Today we're joined by some giants in the multifamily investment sales space. We got Aaron Kuroiwa, David Ferber, and Christian Zaciewski. It's a real honor to have you guys on today. I handpicked you guys. We're doing the multifamily series right now. Aaron, you've blown up the Indiana market and that corner of the world, and it's been cool to watch. It's super incredible how you climbed the ranks in Marcus, and we'll hear more about that soon. David, a longtime friend and client, thank you so much for coming on. You've done a tremendous amount of great work for Matthews. Matthews is one of my favorite guys. Love the guy to death. And you just keep doing amazing stuff in the Jersey City arena and surrounding towns. Christian, you've been a tremendous friend, and you've done tremendous things for Newmark in the Michigan, Kentucky, and Ohio markets. Played with some of the big boys, and I'm proud to call you a friend. So we'll introduce ourselves. I introduced myself already. I'm Cost Seg Isaac Weinberger. Aaron, we'll start with you. Give us a minute or two background about how you got started in the space, which markets you're focused on, your style, just a quick overview, and then we'll dive into it a bit soon.
Yeah. So Aaron Kuroiwa, based in the Indianapolis, Indiana, Marcus and Millichap office. Started in the business about 7 years ago. This is a second career for me. I had previously run a language services company in Phoenix, Arizona before this for about 12 years that I founded when I was in my 20s. And wife and I wanted to move back to Indiana, be close to family, as often that wins out. And joined Marcus right out of the gates, and knew this was the field that I wanted to be in. From that time, built a team, and we have a pretty regional footprint. I run, the middle markets team for Marcus in Indiana, Louisville, Kentucky. We do a little bit of Central Illinois, but really and then we've got teammates who are on the ground in St. Louis and Kansas
Love
City.
it. Christian, thank you again for coming on. Give us a bit of a background, your story at Newmark. Let's hear it.
Yeah, so thanks for having me on, Isaac. It's a pleasure to be here. My name is Christian Zaciewski. I'm a director for Newmark. I lead our Michigan multifamily investment sales team in partnership with my three partners, George Scaff in Ohio, Matt Newcomer in Ohio, and we just hired a young man, Carter Stevens from Marcus down in Columbus to help us out in Columbus as well. And we cover Michigan, Ohio, Kentucky, and Indiana. I've been in commercial real estate since 2015. Started working with a small CB affiliate shop in a tertiary market. Did that for about 5 years. Got the opportunity to come into Newmark and lead our Michigan multifamily team. I've been here since 2022, and it's been a blast getting to know you and working with you. And a good old Michigan boy like you, Isaac. We run in the same circles, and it's been a lot of fun getting to know and meet everybody that we know together. And most notably, I just met your younger brother a week ago, and looking forward to meeting him and helping him out with his journey as well.
Wow, I love it. Yes, I have a special place in my heart for Michigan. I grew up there, and super cool to just run some things of old past here. And like Christian's like, oh yeah, I know that one. So cool stuff, man. David, I love you, man. Thank you so much for coming on. You've done such great things in the space. Give us a bit of a background about yourself and where you are today.
Sure. Yeah. So I started back in 2020, commercial real estate. In multifamily, I was put in Hudson County. I started at Marcus and Millichap. January 2020, 2 months later, COVID hit, which was exciting, but actually was a blessing in disguise for the growth in my career. They say in your first year in as an agent, you don't make too much money if you're working in the commercial world. So it was an opportunity to be able to really add value and build relationships with a lot of owners in the market that year. And then next year, it was a strong market. And I was focused in Hudson County, starting at Marcus and Millichap. Before that, I was actually an accountant in Ernst& Young, CPA by background. Realized I didn't want to sit in front of a computer my whole life. I wanted to be out there in the world, work on transactions, be involved in that space. I love what I do now. It's been now 4.5 years and joined Matthews about a year and a half ago. And throughout my career, closed $250 million of sales just in Hudson County, which is in northern New Jersey, little over 1,200 units. And it's been a great ride so far.
Love it. You keep making waves, and it's incredible to see you at events. Obviously, you're local, so I get to see you more often. Good stuff, guys. So, obviously, to all the listeners, Matthews, Marcus, and Millichap and Newmark are no small boys in the space. I know so many Marcus guys, so many Matthews guys, and Newmark is just obviously one of the staples. So, Aaron, I want to start with you. I've done my research on you, and it's you can pat yourself on the back. It's pretty incredible. The stuff that you've done. You really built yourself up from ground up. You've made it to the top tier in Marcus, and it comes with hard work. Something that I'll actually say over from Kyle Matthews. I met him at the ICSC in New York. I asked him, I said, hey, Kyle, what's one piece of advice you'll give me? And he said, Isaac, everybody wants to be millionaires. He said, are you willing to do what the 1% of the 1% do to become those millionaires? Are you going to get to the office at 6 o'clock in the morning? Are you going to close shop at 4 o'clock? Or are you going to stay till 8? And Aaron, through my conversations with you, that work ethic that you have is tremendous. Maybe just talk about your early days, what you did, how you got to where you are. Let's hear it.
Yeah. Thanks for the question. That's a long answer. I'm trying to think.
Take your time.
What's the Cliff Notes version of this so I don't put anybody to sleep? I think that work ethic is just a fundamental building block of brokerage. Certainly, are there brokers who make a decent living? Kind of living I wouldn't say it's stereotypical, but I would say it's the image that a lot of people have in their mind of what a broker looks like in their mind and why they're intrigued by the business. And the successful brokers are none of those things. You're not working 20-hour weeks. It's definitely 60, 70, 80-hour weeks, especially when you're beginning. When I started out in the business, actually, my managing director said, hey, St. Louis is a market that's open. And me being gung ho, I said, sure. And I was working the St. Louis market as my primary target from Indianapolis. And so what I would do is every week I would set up 5 meeting slots. I would set 5 appointments and drive to St. Louis every Friday. I'd get up at 5 in the morning, make the 4-hour drive, have 4 to 5 meetings, and then drive back. I wanted to be back and be home with my family and sleep in my own bed that night. So it usually be, a 16 to 18-hour day, and was doing, about 30 transactions a year in the St. Louis market when I first started out. And now I don't go there very often, but when I do, I question how I did that and maintain that schedule, because it is a brutal drive to do down and back in the same day when you've got that number of meetings. But I think to answer your question, work ethic is not a choice. It's not hey, maybe I have a different style. That is a fundamental building block of being a successful broker in my mind. So, having that work ethic. And I think, to add to what Kyle said of, are you willing to do what the 1% do? I've seen other people reframe that kind of same statement. Are you willing to become who you need to become in order to reach that success? So are you willing to change who you are, right? It's not just something you kind of pretend, right? It's not a fake it till you make it scenario. It's, am I willing to change and give up pieces of me in exchange for, what lies on the other side? And I think that is what Kyle talks about a lot in his social media presence is, that work ethic. And it's not just um, hey, do this for a little while and then you'll get to where you want to be. It's no, this is a fundamental aspect of who I am is, that work ethic and that you're going to carry that through. And does it get easier? Sure. It does get easier to a degree, but it's really because you've increased your capacity, not because the task has gotten easier.
I love it. And the follow-up question I'd ask you is that, does there ever come a point where you're complacent? Hey, I have deal flow. I've become who I've become through the past 10, 15 years of hard work. Or do you still today put in that same, I know I'm putting you on the spot here, you still put in that same amount of effort to just keep building up and up?
I would say you will see brokers come and go who make good money and certainly, start to fade as, they've had some success. And the really successful brokers are the ones who maintain that and who can do that over a long period of time. And me personally, I don't have an off switch. And so for me, you know, I may not wake up at 5 a.m. every day, but I'm still usually working 12 hours a day, you know, even being number one in the office or even in the region multiple times, I'm still leaving the last one in the office, turning the lights off. And so for me, it is a competitive drive and part of who I am. And are there times when you are tempted, to take your foot off the gas a little bit? Sure, everybody has that, right? But usually with a day or two of rest, you wake up and that fire's right back there and you're ready to go. So sure, there's always that temptation, but I think if you have that fundamental competitive drive, that it's hard to shut that off. And so the short answer
No,
is no.
100%. And it's funny, I'm very much like that. I don't stop. And sometimes it gets too much. My wife will tell me, like, it's okay. You could relax a bit. You could
Mm-hmm.
enjoy a little bit, but
Yep.
that off switch is just not part of my DNA. David,
Yeah, my wife is very supportive. She's been, we've been married 19 years, and she's always been very supportive. But every once in a while, she'll give me the text or phone call and say, "Hey, you've been working late for a while. It's time to come home tonight. Like, need some family time."
exactly,
And then the right thing to do is just shut it down and go home and spend some time with the family.
exactly. Good stuff. Good stuff, David. In a world where I don't know the exact numbers and metrics, but in a world where investment sales guys are a dime a dozen, we're talking about, I don't know, 50 investment sales guys or 30 investment sales guys for every owner. When you meet a new prospect, obviously when you get a meeting via a referral, it's a different ball game, a warm referral. We've worked with David. He really, really knows. He takes the deal to heart. He'll make sure it closes. So obviously that's a bit different when you're meeting a prospect for the first time and they say this to you, hey, David, what makes you different? There's 1,000 sales guys out there, 1,000 investment sales guys. Why should I list with you? Why should I trust you? What do you say? What do you bring to the table? I know there's a lot of people out there that have their specific niche and they'll invest in their clients' deals, really lock themselves in. I know Aaron is very, very into that, which I respect tremendously. It could be you guys are as well. but he'll invest in his clients' deals and really try to help out. What do you bring to the table when you're meeting with a new prospect? What do you tell them?
So that's a great question. It's essentially, what's your value? So I think we have to take a step back to when I started out in the industry, right? For me, when I started out, similar to Aaron, I mean, I didn't have a plan B, and I was always told by my mentors to slow down. David, you're running like a Ferrari. If you continue to do that, you're just going to burn out. You're going to get tired. You're not going to continue to do that. Hell no. That was I never to this day I never stopped running like a Ferrari. I love the work. I love the job. I'm passionate about it. Now, the one thing that I think, there are certain things in your career, certain moments where you realize either, it was luck, but certain things fell into place exactly, the way it should have been, that set your career up for success. I was put in a market, which is Hudson County in northern New Jersey. Hudson County is one of, besides for being just a very hot market and a very high transaction market, the way I was taught in the industry, which, started off as a mentality for Marcus and Millichap and training, but also for my mentors, is pick one market, pick one product type, go even further, pick an exact range of buildings as far as units that you're going to sell, 6 to 50 units, own that market, just own it, right? And I like to always go back with that to Bob Knackle. Bob Knackle is one of the best brokers, in my opinion, of all time. And what he did, and this will never leave me, is he started, I'm just going to give an example, 60th Street. He knew every owner on 60th Street. He did a BOV, a property analysis on every single building on that street. And when anybody asked him, they said, "Hey, why should I choose you, Bob Knackle?" Well, you don't have a choice. I know every owner on your street. I know every rent roll. I have all the information. There's nobody that knows this street better. Well, I mean, do you have a choice, right? Why would you go with another broker? So it's the same concept, right? You start very small. For me, it started in Jersey City. I sold buildings called owners between 6 to 20 units, let's say. And that's all I did. I called them over and over and over and over again. The same way Aaron said, he went on 5 meetings a week. He had a time block for 5 meetings every single week. There wasn't a single week in 2 years when I started where I did not go on 5 meetings. And if I did go on 4 meetings one week, I went on 6 or 7 the next week, because that was not okay. So I had to hit every single metric. And when you go on 5 meetings a week for 2 years straight, you make 250 cold calls into the same market with the same people every single week for 2 years straight. And when you're underwriting these properties, you're doing research on every building in that market. It's the same information over and over and over again. And then you start to become obsessed with it. You learn the metrics, you learn the numbers, you know every freaking sale on the top of your head. You don't need to look it up. You know every rent in 10 different submarkets within your market, and you create an obsession about it, right? And you can relay that information when it's a deal, it's a buyer, it's a seller, it's anything that comes up in a deal, and you've already seen the issue, the objection, and you've seen the numbers. You become an expert at what you do. So the easy answer is, hey, besides for selling more real estate than any other broker, because of the expertise and the specialization that I've created in this market, my track record has shown that we get 27% higher than any other broker. Why is that? Because we know the market better. We know every buyer in the market. We know every seller. We know the data. We have the data. So it's one very simple thing. Become an expert at what you do. Never go away from that clear path. Right? Because brokers get excited when, hey, maybe there's a deal in another market that, wow, someone's handing them a listing in another market that's not their expertise. The answer is no. I'll refer it to somebody else. Don't waste your time on deals, on buildings, on transactions, on anything that's going to lead you away from your core market, which, whatever that is, everybody should have a core market. Just stick with that. And it sometimes is hard to turn away business that's not in your market. But when you continue to stay on that path, you just You'll get more of it and more of it and more of it, and you'll be able to provide the best service to your clients because of that.
Wow, I'm blown away because while what you're saying is somewhat obvious to a certain extent, it drives it home so well. And the last point you made talks to me the most. You're a broker, and you have business is slowing, and your market is Washington State. Somebody gives you a listing in Texas, and you're like, should I do it? Should I not do it? And I might be able to make X amount of money. It's going to be an easy one. But the second you go into a territory where you're not so familiar with, you're compromising your brand because, hey, he asked me a question and I'm not so familiar. Oh, hey, and you start stumbling a bit. Hey, this guy doesn't know his market so well. So, like you said, when you have your core market, and I think when it comes to investment sales, it's much more important in investment sales than it is in debt brokerage or in cost seg because it doesn't really matter so much. But when it comes to, let's say, title, investment sales, knowing your market like your backyard is important. I remember, Aaron, I was on a call with you, and I was talking about some property, and you're like, and you blew my mind that, like, on the spot, you knew exactly what the address was. That's knowing your backyard. And I'm so happy you brought up Bob Knackel. I'm a big fan of Bob Knackel, and his map room literally astonishes me time over time again about him having everything down to a T. And there's nothing better that you can give an owner that feeling, that confident feeling that you know my situation inside out. This deal will get closed no matter what. Obviously, investing in your clients' deals and providing value and showing them value is important. But those are side benefits. You want to be that guy, and
Uh-huh.
I love it.
Yeah, and one very quick follow-up on that. Can you imagine telling an owner who also owns in your market, but then brings you another deal in a different market, and you say, "Hey, I'm sorry, I am not going to provide you the best service. I don't know much about this market. I don't know anything about this market. I'm sure I can figure it out. I'm a smart guy. I can research the market, learn the numbers. But why would you hire me? You should hire somebody else. But if you have a deal in my market, I will absolutely crush it for you. It's just not what I do. So if you don't mind, I can refer it out to somebody else. And please, think of me in our market because this is my core."
It would be it's such a good plug for yourself. Like he's like, oh my god, like this guy is honest. He knows what he's good at. He's not just trying to conquer the world. Love it. Wow. Christian, last but not least, for the first phase of questions, did my brother Zeke tell me you're getting married soon?
I am. Yeah. Yeah, he
Congratulations.
did.
That's incredible. And how long?
Thank you. It's 5 weeks.
Wow.
5 weeks.
Guys,
Yep.
to
And
all the listeners, everybody, congrats to Christian. Major stuff. Are you going to be staying in Detroit? You're not moving out anywhere.
no, we're staying in
Okay.
Detroit Metro. Yes,
Wow.
sir.
Huge stuff, man. Huge stuff. So, Christian, let me ask you like this. Obviously, Newmark is no mom and pop. Newmark is one of the big boys. You guys done tremendous things. I know some of your colleagues on the debt side of things and the investment sales side of things. Um, Give us just like a bit of like advice of how you became who you've become, what you've done, what specific techniques. Did you sit there cold calling your first year of your career, 300 cold calls a day? How did you not burn out? You've become a guy in the space that people trust. You've listed properties for clients of mine, guys that are big names in the space, and they trust you. What makes you special? What do you bring to the table? What niche are you proud of that you've created?
Well, I believe it kind of goes back to a combination of what David and Aaron said, and I'm not going to beat a dead horse to death, but I believe it truly just begins with showing up every day. You can't fail if you don't. If you show up every day, it's going to be very hard for you to not succeed, especially in a down market. So I believe just showing up every day, keeping a positive attitude, that can go such a long way, especially in the beginning of your career. When you're first starting off, you don't know anybody, nobody knows you. You're about around a bunch of older, successful men and women that have a lot of money. You can be sometimes intimidated, but you just got to show up, believe in yourself, believe that what you're doing, and it's going to come. And I don't like to keep it simple, but I think just keeping it as simple as that is some of the best advice some of the younger guys, can just hear. I got 3 or 4 new guys starting in the Newmark office on the office brokerage side of things. And, they're getting down in the dumps. It's hard to find tenants. And it's like, look, just show up every day, keep doing what you're doing. It's going to pay off. And in 2 years, business is going to be rolling in so fast that you're going to have to get yourself, your own team. So I think just starting off for those guys, I just want to hammer that home. Just show up every day, do the right thing, and it'll pay off for you. But to answer your question, the first couple years of my career, nothing but cold calls, right? I have two tremendous partners, George and Matt, that do an incredible amount of business. And they just hit you over the phone like, hey, you're going to make 50 to 100 calls a day. You got to get to know everybody. You're going to show up, time block, do whatever you need to do, but you need to get your calls going. You need to get your BOVs going. And then just rep by rep by rep, day by day by day, in, out, rinse and repeat, and pretty soon you're going to have a ton of business and not know what to do. And, luckily I'm blessed that we're starting to get there here in Michigan. We had 30% of the market last year on the market rate side of things. And, it's just showing up every day, continuing to make the calls, do what you need to do. And I think it just comes down to being disciplined and, showing up.
Love it. Love it. So guys, get ready for the question I've been waiting for. And this is a question that any vendor, any service provider, any folks that work for somebody else that are successful, probably at a certain point in their career should ask themselves. And obviously there's a reason both ways. So ready or not, here we go. I want to hear all your takes. So whoever answers first, we'll hear from you first. Have you? And if you have, why was the answer no? Here we go. Aaron, David, Christian, why don't you go open your own shops? Let's go. You're successful, guys.
I got it.
Let's go.
I got it. All right. When you open up your own shop, you start to become a business owner and a manager. As an agent, as a broker, I don't want to do that. I want to basically broker all day. I want to talk to people all day. I want to negotiate contracts. I want to go win business. When you open up your own shop, you now have to deal with marketing, support, accounting, everything to run a business. You become a business owner, someone who manages a business instead of an agent who likes to sell real estate. Simple as that. And you'll take probably 10 steps back before you take any steps forward.
It's a great answer. I want to hear your other takes before I follow up.
Well, I'll add to that. I mean, I think David nailed it. I mean, I would add that certainly have had those opportunities, have had those thoughts. And I've ran my own business before. I had 60 contractors, 10 full-time staff, and I don't want to go back to that. I like exactly what David said. I don't want to be managing people, especially people who are not as motivated as I am, right? And I think that's the beautiful thing about being in brokerage is generally you have an alignment with motivation and interest of the people that you're surrounded with, and so. To open up a brokerage shop and essentially become, management has no interest to me. So, yeah, for all the reasons that David, said and those additional points, I have no interest.
Why do folks, Christian, why do folks open up their own shops then?
Money's split,
Ego.
Freedom.
I think David hit it. I think ego even more than money because like you guys said, if you're sitting there just selling, yes, you might have to give up that split, but you don't have all that overhead. You don't have all the garbage that you have to deal with. That is going to compromise your time. Christian, I have a question for you. Question goes as follows. In a world of competitiveness, in a world where you're not the only broker, I've seen many a time folks having to pull the wool over buyers and sellers' eyes in order to win stuff. And obviously we'll all preach honesty, but facts at the end of the day, in today's market, interest rates are up. Deals are definitely more scarce than they were 2-3 years ago. Syndications are down. Properties trading are down. It's just definitely quieter. How have you held on to, let's say, your belief of honesty and integrity when obviously different opportunities came up for you to go ahead and maybe pull it a bit to the left? Because I'm assuming those opportunities come up all the time, and I'm assuming there's many brokers out there who do not say the truth when they're listing a property or they're talking about the rent rolls and they're just trying to hide some different components. There's something broken on the property. There's this problem. There's this leak. There's this violation. Fill us in.
That's a great question. It's actually something that we internally and even as an organization at Newmark we talk about all the time. You know, this is such a long game. You need to be built for the long game, and you really need to take your clients and advise them. And your job as an advisor is to put your clients in a position where they're able to make a decision about what is best for them, not what's best for you or anything else like that. Strictly what's best for them. Treat them like your mother. Treat them like your father. What kind of advice would you give your parents? If you just kind of stick to the golden rule, a lot of that and a lot of that business is going to be there for you when those deals that, hey, maybe I shouldn't have taken this one. Maybe I shouldn't have put that value out there. It ends up going to the market. It doesn't clear. Okay, well, then that was the right approach. And we've also all been in the same spot too. Like, oh my gosh, we were super aggressive on that BOV and we got beat out and it went to market and it did clear. So it's just a lot of, getting to know who is the client, what is their circumstances, why do they want to transact, what's the primary motivation for them wanting to transact. Is it a vanity or a sanity thing, as Ron Santamassimo will always say? So once you get a better understanding of really what the goals are of the client, and if you actually spend time trying to figure that out, you're going to be in a much better position to take on or to turn down an assignment.
For sure. I have a client. His name is Glenn Gonzalez. He actually was on the show, I think episode number 2 or 3. He's Obsidian Capital. They're based in Texas. They buy in Texas and Alabama. They just actually did a few deals with Josh Jacobs for Marcus in Alabama. Great guy. And long story short, he had a situation where he was selling a property and the broker came to him and said, hey, by the way, Glenn, there's something broken on the property, some water heater. I don't forgot what it was. And it was going to literally screw up the whole sale. Obviously, it was bigger than a water heater, some big thingy that cost like 50 grand. And so the broker said to him like this, either we could talk about it, we could bring it up, and it potentially could push off the sale by a few weeks and potentially mess things up, or we could just throw it under the rug. Glenn said, I'm not throwing it under the rug. I'm not like that. He bought the guy a whole new system, paid out of pocket, whatever it was. He was at a conference a few years later, and the sale went through. Everything was great. So he was at a show a few years later, and a guy says to him, Glenn, and he says, looks around, he's like, hey, how do I know you? He's like, Glenn, you're the guy. He's like, what guy? He's like, you're the honest guy. He's like, I don't know what you're talking about. He's like, hey, I bought a property from you through this and this broker a couple of years ago. And there was like 100 people standing around, and he told the story to everybody. And I think after that like announcement, like a bunch of people called him up and said, hey, Glenn, you are an honest guy. We want to invest with you. So we all know that being dishonest will get you a deal potentially like right now, but it will mess you up for the long run. Being honest will never fail you. So Aaron, my question is, you've definitely lost deals in your career to folks that probably have lied to sellers and buyers. And how do you deal with that?
Great question. I think, I think Christian had the right answer. Just you know that your long-term reputation matters most, right? And that's what it comes down to. And I think in addition to that, especially when you're younger, I think everyone evolves into a better person, hopefully, as they get older and older, right? And you've learned lessons where, there's a lot of gray area in what we do, right? There is, in terms of how much you share, what you don't share, all those things. And I think it all comes down to is, who you want to be as a person and how you want to face the world and the reputation, that you have in the marketplace. I've had, conversations with some owners recently who have said, hey, certain brokers, certainly will say that I'll work with them again, but I'm always going to be on my toes, with them, with that particular person because of X, Y, and Z experience. And so you have to know that. And I think that everyone in this business, I would say everyone, but most people who are successful in this business are very smart and realize that the truth comes out, right? And they're either smart enough to see through what you're saying and they already know the answer, or they'll figure it out really quick. And so the reality is you have no incentive long term or even medium term to not be honest. You are certainly, so you have different ways you can look at it. You can look at it from the honor component of who you are as a person And you can look at it from a business math equation, right? From a math problem, the math doesn't work out either. So I think that the interests are aligned from that perspective of, if that's who you want to be as a person and where you want to be in business long term, that, the incentives are there regardless. So, you want those strong relationships, right? And I think so. Something coming to mind is the saying is, if you want to go somewhere quick, go alone. If you want to go somewhere, you want to go far, go together, right? And you have to have those mutual relationships with clients that are going to last. And there's going to be tough conversations. There's going to be tough, experiences and times, and you just have to deal with those head on.
Love it, David. David, what's your take on this topic?
I'll just, and really, like, very simple. I was taught this very early on. You build trust, you win their business. Trust doesn't work when you're dishonest. It's as simple as that. So I don't think
Have
there's
you
anything else
lost
to say,
deals? Have
right?
you lost deals to folks who have lied?
Oh, absolutely. Of course I have. And I can live with myself and I'm comfortable with that. And you know what? Usually those deals don't close and they come right back to you. So it's all about with everything. It's about managing everybody's expectations properly. And you know what? If you know that there's another broker you're competing with and they're lying about price, they're lying about a buyer. Hey, right? This is a classic. Hey, this other broker already has a buyer. There's someone who's in a 1031. Okay, no problem. Just manage their expectations. Explain to them, hey, well, this is typically what happens. This is what's going to happen next, and this is what's going to happen next. And if they say this or they do this, just look out for those things. And guess what? 95% of the time, it falls apart. Those things happen and it comes right back to you. Happens all the time.
Wow.
And then you build trust and then you win their business and
Love
repeat.
it. Wow. No, it's good. It's it's super important. And somebody who's an owner and somebody who's dealing with investment sales guys all day, it's probably hard sometimes to pick out those guys. But eventually, if you stay consistent enough with who you are and you stay true to yourself, they'll see through. They'll see through the liars. They'll pop to the top. They'll be able to see
They
it.
always
So,
do.
like you said, it's the long game. Aaron, I have a great question for you. So it's no secret that you own some nice multifamily properties, which is pretty cool. When you bought these properties, was the reason behind it? Did you buy it just merely to have put together a nice deal, or was part of the calculation to really know the ins and outs of owning a property that could help you better broker properties, or both?
Yeah, I mean, so first and foremost, it was to put together a good deal. I mean, and that's just the honest truth, right? It's like, hey, you're buying real estate for the opportunity. We have not bought a lot of assets, and the reason is we're brokers first. We're here. We're not here to compete with our clients. And the ones that we have are owners who've either just refused to share any kind of financials, refused to engage us in a fiduciary way, and they're all usually smaller assets that most of our clients would be looking at anyway. But so we've bought a few properties, but a beautiful and great benefit of that is knowing you know what the my owners are talking about, what my clients are talking about. And if there's an owner who's feeding me a line on what something costs, I know. I actually have a real time scenario of that. I had somebody who just recently retraded a deal, um, and it just so happened to be for 11 roofs. And one of the properties I own has 11 roofs with the exact same square footage, and the retrade was for double what I just recently paid. Um, and so I was able to, challenge that, that and say, hey, look, I'm not saying that what you're asking is invalid, that that's not a real need. However, you know, anyone who's replaced a roof knows the cost, and this is not the cost. And so this is not going to be accepted because this is not a valid and fair request. So we're let's readdress that and reframe it before we even have that conversation, because otherwise it comes across as just uh you know in bad faith, otherwise.
Cool. It's cool that like you said, you have a property really gives you that inside look. You're not looking
Yeah.
at it from the outside anymore. And like you said, a guy says to you, X, Y, and Z, you're like, hey, that's not the case. I
Yeah.
know, and it probably also gives you more credibility when you're approaching a potential new client. I own some stuff. I really know the ins and outs.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, when you know firsthand what a what a turn cost, or what, renovating a unit costs, and you can speak to this per square foot flooring price installed. If you need, additional, material, the prep work, all of those different components of a quote for flooring, you can speak to those intelligently. It certainly adds credibility. And so, the other times when we've been missing data on what is landscaping cost. I've pulled my own contracts and said, okay, we have about the same amount of acreage here at this asset. What is our landscaping contract? What's our utility cost in this county? And so it's added a lot of credibility, and also filled in missing data points when needed.
Love it, love it. Christian, in a world of multifamily decline in the sense of purchases, obviously due to interest rates and due to the fact that it's so hard to raise equity these days, how have you pivoted? What have you changed up to still make deals happen? It's slower, and we can't beat the system, but we can be creative. Like, for example, I know that there's one of my colleagues was very, very focused on multifamily syndication when it came to cost seg. I focus on like everything, but he was very focused on multifamily. And obviously, when interest rates went up and the syndication world went a little bit down, so he started focusing a lot more on new construction, development. He pivoted. In what ways have you pivoted? Have you felt that you've had to pivot? Have you not pivoted at all and you're just hitting the pavement every day? And obviously, deal flow is a bit slower, but it is what it is. And it's a numbers game. So the more people you meet, hopefully, the more deals come across the desk. Fill us in a bit.
Yeah, of course. So great question. In my market, transactional velocity was down 80% in the state of Michigan in 2023 from 2022. There was only about 29 market rate trades, 100 units and up. The previous year, there was 120. This year, there's only been 10 trades. We're on pace to match the same amount of market rate trades in 2024 as we were in 2023. And that equates to less than 1.5% of the housing stock trading hands. So to answer your question, transactional velocity is down a big way here in the state of Michigan. And contrary to any sort of switching, this is actually the time to turn it up a notch. Do what your competition isn't doing. Show up every day. Make your phone calls. This is when your clients need you. They're going through capital calls. The debt market is unbelievable. Henry, Rickley, on our New York debt team, they can speak to the capital markets. They've done about $1 billion of originations this year. Every day deals are coming in, they're dying, they're getting resurrected. This is now when your clients need you the most. And if there's ever a time to push the accelerator down and not give up, and to not quit, it's right now. My business hasn't changed, other than I'm making more calls than I was over the last 2 years, and I'm doing everything I possibly can so that when this market does come back on, I'm in a prime position to take advantage of that and just rise my way to the top.
Love it. And it's really like what David said earlier in the show, that there's actually a certain opportunity, a good opportunity right now to do certain things that you couldn't do when you're in a fast-paced market and the merry-go-round's going 100 miles per hour. You can hop on. But when the merry-go-round slows down, there's so many owners that are actually willing to talk, and you create those relationships and you just knock them in. And then obviously when the market picks up, they're willing to talk with you further. So, David, I have a question for you, and then we'll head toward the end of the show. My question is as follows. I bought a car from a guy 7 years ago. A year later, the transmission blew. I went back to him and I said, hey, dude, what'd you sell me, man? You sold me a piece of junk. And he's like, oh, I didn't know. I knew. I didn't know. Fine. We work something out. You sell a guy a property. Has it ever happened and a guy came back to you a year or two later and said, David, what the hell did you get me into? Has that ever happened?
That's a good question. When you're it goes again to managing everybody's expectations and being honest and trusting people, and being trustworthy with other people. Share all the facts, share everything you have, make sure to provide everything that they tell you to do, and give them the facts. Don't hide anything that was shared to you. As long as you do that, it really hasn't happened. I mean, don't get me wrong. Have buyers called me and thought that they overpaid? Absolutely happens all the time, right? on average, my deals are 27% higher than other agents in my market. So yes, people feel all the time like they're getting a bad deal, or they pay too much for it. But in the long run, those deals end up being incredible. And I get calls back all the time saying you were right, and this is a great deal, and the numbers really ended up working out. So hasn't happened yet, but there haven't been foreclosures yet. There haven't been distress yet in my market. And I wouldn't be surprised if that starts happening, right, in the next 6 to 12 months, because it really hasn't happened. There hasn't been distressed deals that hit the market yet in Hudson County. So when that happens, anyone who bought in the last 2 to 5 years can very much be having that conversation. They're not pieces of junk, but they may have paid too much for it, and they might be in a bad position right now because of where they got debt 5 years ago or 3 years ago and where they need to refinance.
Exactly, and it's not your fault just because the guy took out a bridge loan or the guy mismanaged his property and his NOI's in the dirt. That's not your fault. You're not managing the property for him, so you can't come back and blame everything on you. But I just I don't envy that position of being, whether it's a debt broker or investment sales guy, and be like, come back to you later on, hey, you got me into a bad deal. And obviously, it comes back to that original conversation. If you lay everything out on the table, then when he comes back and say, hey, I told you that there could be this potential problem, you're not hiding anything. And that's why when somebody does pull the wool over a client's eyes, it might help you for today, but in 2 years down the road, what are you going to answer up when he comes back? Hey, you didn't tell me about this and this problem.
Yeah,
Um, good,
it
good
it
stuff.
go it goes back to just be very consistent in everything that you do, and as long as you trust yourself with the consistency, you can always go back to say, hey, this is always what I do in this situation, and just trust yourself with that.
Aaron or Christian, before we get to the end of the show, any thoughts on this idea of clients coming back to you and saying, "Hey, this deal wasn't as good as you promised"? Has that happened? Are you ever worried about that?
No, I think I'd echo what David says on that. I mean, I don't really have anything to add. I think everyone has to just do the. Uh, we have to do our own due diligence as brokers, right, to know what we're selling and what we're sharing, and we have to assist the buyers to do their due diligence as much as we can, and provide as much information so that everybody's making educated decisions. But fortunately, I haven't had that situation.
Christian, anything, or we're good to go?
Well, I think we're good to go. I agree with both Aaron and David.
So Christian, we'll start with you guys. This was incredible. Something I like to do at the end of the show is just, there's newbie investors out there, there's newbie vendors, there's newbie investment sales guys. Christian, what piece of advice, short piece of advice, you just give to a new investment sales guy? He's interning right now in the summer, as well as a turning point in your career that really lit that fire under you.
Yeah, so just show up and do what you got to do. When you get a prospect, when you get a client, convert it, take them out. So in my very beginning of the career, I was 23 years old, struggling to make money. I've been a full-time real estate broker, since I was 21 years old, 100% commission. I had a piece of land. It was a vacant piece of dirt. This was before I specialized in multifamily. I was kind of a jack of all trades, which I don't recommend doing, but it allowed me to learn the business. So I had a piece of dirt for $55,000. It was 5 acres. It was actually the first deal that I ever sold. But long story short, I got contacted from a preferred Tractor Supply and Dollar General developer who was actually looking at the site and was thinking about either putting a Tractor Supply or a Dollar General on it. So he said he was coming into the market and he wanted to take a tour and he wanted to see the site and see the topography, see if it would actually work, because the site was dirt cheap. So they loved that. But there were some issues that there were some wetlands in the rear. They just wanted to make sure everything was all right. So a 23-year-old kid, I just showed up. I ended up having the father and son in my car. I drove them around the entire market for 6 or 7 hours. We had coffee, we had lunch. After we had lunch, they looked at me and they said that was the first time a broker has ever driven me around and spent an entire day with me looking at land sites in the market. That turned into so many deals in my career, from one of 4 preferred Tractor Supply and Dollar General developers in Ohio, West Virginia, and Kentucky at the time. We did a whole bunch of transactions. I got to know the father. I got to know the son very, very well. We have a great relationship to this day, but that just came from showing up, doing the right things, and you never know what's going to happen or who you're going to meet.
I love that. It's a challenge by me every single day. I think to myself, hey, this guy, I have him locked up. On to the next. Make your guys happy. Just because you talk to a guy and he even did some work with you, it doesn't mean that he's married to you for life. You make an event, take him out to a game, make them feel like you care, which you actually do. David, a piece of advice to a newbie investment sales guy, and a turning point in your career that really got you going.
Sure. So I just wrote down a bunch of different things, and I'll try to run through them pretty quickly. Choosing a strong mentor is everything. Okay. Being on a team where someone's going to commit the time and teach you everything, to me, is a must. I mean, you can be successful without it, but I think it'll just fast track your entire career. When I started on a team, I made 20% on every deal. And these are deals that I sourced and brought in. And I made, between my splits with the company and my team, I made 20% on every deal. That's not a lot of money. Every single dollar that I, let's call it, invested in or lost in those deals, it was worth every penny, because you're taught the tools that after 2 years in the business, you can now go on your own, and you can be a lot more successful than you ever could have been if you weren't on a team. So that's number one, right? And be coachable. Take everything that someone who's done it better than you do, has been more successful than you do. Be coachable. Take everything they say, write it down, and go do it. Second is it's a very simple business. It's not easy. And what I mean by that is just hit your metrics. It's not an easy thing to do. Make 250 to 300 calls every single week. Go on 5 meetings every single week. Do 2 to 3 pitches every single week. Add to that piggy bank every single week of proposals. No matter what, I really believe that if you do those things and hit those numbers, there is no possible way you cannot be successful. There's no way. I really genuinely believe that. There's going to be really hard times in the brokerage world. People call it the valley of despair. You're going to dip into these trenches, which is really hard to get out of. But those are the brokers that come out of those valleys, those deep trenches that it's hard to get out of. And even during that time, you continue to hit those numbers. When you come out of that, and you're going to have a few of those throughout your first 2 years, but when you come out of that, the sky's the limit. So just hit your metrics, hit your numbers, no matter what, and be consistent with it. And just surround yourself around people that could really give you advice, and no plan B, right? Just never have that plan B. There's only plan A. That's the only way that's going to work. And just never stop. And love it. Love what you do. Love what you do.
Love it. Any turning point in your career, lost a deal, got a big deal that really got you going?
I'll tell you my major turning point. 2 years in the business, after growing everything and doing about 200 BOVs in my first 2 years, I lost everything. My mentors went over to a competing company. My whole, let's call it everything, just disappeared overnight. All I had was my cell phone numbers in my phone. So everything was gone. I got some of it back over time, but not all of it. And I had to start scratch from 2 years in the business after going in those valleys and hitting the numbers and doing the pitches. And that was a major turning point. It was a sink or swim moment. And I swam faster than I ever could have if I stayed on that team. And it forced me to create a better database, get more proposals, do things that took me so out of my comfort zone. But I did it anyway because I didn't have a choice. And it allowed me to, just swim farther and faster than I ever could have, because I didn't think I was ready, but I didn't have a choice. That was my biggest turning point. That was a big moment.
It's quite a turning point, and obviously you easily could have given up over there.
And I could have gone on a team. I was offered many teams to join and just, hey, we'll take you under our wing, we'll do it. And I said, you know what? and this was to credit my wife pushed me to do this, is if you don't give it a shot on your own right now, and so many people told me agents do not they don't do it. You need a partner, you need a team, you need something. And my wife pushed me. She said, you'll regret if you don't give it a shot right now doing it on your own.
Wow.
And I did it.
Guys, this was awesome. I love this. I'm excited for the listeners. To all the listeners, you guys are listening to some of the greats. Aaron, David, Christian, get in touch with them in your markets. These guys are fabulous. Thank you guys so much for coming on, and see you on the other side. Hey everybody, thank you so much for tuning in to the Stage Debate Podcast, the only podcast that is panel style. Drop a like, follow us, and subscribe to see all future episodes. I'm just as excited as you are. Let's go.